Hi guys, welcome to Sew on Wednesday. I'm Lorene. I'm with my friend Carolyn, and this is part two of the kitten quilt. And Carolyn's been busy, so I'm gonna let her take it from here and explain what she's been doing to piece this together.
Okay, well, the previous video, we talked about having 9 panels, which we squared up to be exactly 8 by 10 inches in this case. You can have them any size, of course, but for our quilt, it's 8 by 10. And what I've done, I've already sewn together the bottom 2 rows with the strip in the middle, as well as from side to side. And on the top row here, I've already done the first panel here, I've actually added 1 strip. This is going to be, we're now going to sew strip number 2 to this, and then we will add another 10-inch strip here to that one and combine them together. And in this case, since we know our panels are exactly 10 inches, I actually cut 10-inch strips. And so we'll need to go to the sewing machine now and go from there.
Okay.
Okay, so what we have, I already sewed the strip on the first panel. I'm going to sew the strip to the right-hand side of the second panel. And since we are using exact size strips, we're going to pin both bottom and top, and even in the middle, because we don't want this strip to stretch too much, otherwise it'll be a little bit wonky. So there we are. So we're going to just sew our 1/4 inch seam allowance here, and it won't take us long to do that.
And you did a back stitch on that?
Yes, I did. That's a preference. It's with such small pieces like this that are going to be attached to others, it's not as critical, but it's more out of habit that I do it.
Okay.
And we're going to just sew this here. And again, I'll back stitch just to secure that. Cut it. And what we have is a strip now on the right hand side of the first 2 panels. And so now I'm going to take the 3rd panel and attach it to this one right here.
Okay.
And again, you want to pin it. And because we're working with a little bit wider piece here, I'm actually going to pin off here to the left, just so it secures and holds it so it doesn't kind of slip down on me. But again, I'm going to pin the bottom. And I'm going to put one in the middle just so that that little strip doesn't waver too much on me. And we're going to just do our 1/4 inch seam.
Okay.
Oh, I have a little bit of a machine issue here. Sometimes
Did it get knotted up?
Yeah, just a little bit, but that's all right. It won't be a problem. I'll just fix it here. Just gotta stretch it out. Sometimes that happens when you start to do the back stitch too close to the edge.
Oh, okay.
And so if you start a few stitches in and then do your back stitch, it usually is a little bit better.
Okay, well that's good to know.
And with pinning it along the way, you have a less tendency for the material to stretch, because you don't want it to be too stretchy.
Right.
Unpin this, and then we'll be taking this to the ironing board shortly, but we want to attach one more. I don't know if you want to go ahead and film this, or we'll just cut to the ironing board.
Okay, well we'll just pause it right here and go to the ironing board. Okay, we're at the sewing machine. Not the sewing machine. The ironing board.
It's the ironing board, Lorraine.
I know it.
Okay, so we've sewn the top panels together. We're just pressing the back. Since we're using white fabric for both front and back, we're just ironing the seams in. We're just being consistent with how we've ironed all the seams. And so this is going to be our top panel. This is now going to be added to, step right over here, Lorraine.
Okay.
We're going to add this to the top, and it should go pretty quickly. But what I'm going to do, I have a strip here a little bit wider than the width of these 3 panels sewn together. And unlike what I did for the 10-inch panels where I cut an exact strip, in this case I have a piece that's several inches wider than the width, which is fine. I'm going to just start right here, overlapping it, about a ½ inch or so. I'm going to step right over here to the machine.
Okay, hold on. Let me get over there to the machine.
And we're basically going to pin everything. And because of the panels being sewn together with the seams inward, I'm going to start by pinning at the seams, because when I sew, I want to be able to have those seams go in the correct direction. So the back of the quilt will lay a little bit flatter. And of course I have excess here at the end that will be trimmed off later, and a little excess at the top that will be trimmed off. But I am going to go ahead and pop a couple more pins in here. Okay, so we're going to start now. I could, just like I did for the panels, have an exact length, but in this case I'm just giving myself a little extra room. I'm not going to be, it's important not to stretch this strip. So I'm going to get my 1/4 inch there. And as you approach this seam, the first seam automatically is laying down in the direction that you're sewing, so that's good. But as you approach that second seam, it's going to be important to double check that it's still laying down, folded in the right direction. So once you have secured that first seam, you just want to take a little peek and say, okay, yes, it's still folded correctly. Because it does have a tendency to slip a little bit. And we're approaching the second seamed area here. First seam it's going to lay down fine, but we just want to double check that second one, and it should look fine. So we have attached our strip here. And the seams are correct in the back. So now we need to iron this again, and we will then come back in a moment. Okay, so we now have the top strip put on here of that's going to be between the first and second row. And to help in lining up our seams when we attach that first row, I'm going to do a little pen mark here. I'm going to line up right here at the seam. And this again is this friction pen that's erasable when it's ironed. And this just helps me a little bit in lining up in matching up the that first row. So I'm just doing it from the edge of the seam, which I know is accurate, and so that gives me these two lines here, 2 lines here. And what I will be doing now is taking this, and it's important to make sure, remember we're attaching it to the bottom, so we don't want to put it upside down. So now we're going to turn this up like this, and we will be able to, with those ink marks, we could have pulled the fabric back about 1.5 inches and matched up those lines, but I just figured since the ink is not a permanent thing, and I'm going to start by pinning at each seam rather than the sides. So I'm matching that seam with that ink line. And again, when we sew, we're going to want to make sure our seams lay the direction we want them to. So we have that matched up. In this middle panel, we're going to add a pin just to make sure it doesn't waver too much. And then at the end, we're going to pin the end. And then another one in the middle. The more you sew, the fewer pins you end up using, but for right now, we're just pinning, having fun.
And by the way, your nails look marvelous, darling.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yes, I had to get those done. And we're going to pin this here. And then we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew from here all the way to the edge, and then we'll come back and show you what it looks like.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so we have finished sewing the first row onto the others, and we just pressed it a little bit, and we'll see how accurate I was with getting the lines lined up there, and they look pretty good.
They're so cute. It is turning out so
It's gonna be
cute.
darling. And there's a few little strings that we will clip away, of course. And if you're looking at the back, you'll see that the seams all lay in the correct direction that we wanted them to. And everything is nice.
I love it.
Give it a little spritz there. And this is going to be adorable when we finish it. So the next step is we're going to have to pull out our batting, and we're going to, well, actually the next step, we're going to bind the quilt with 1-inch strip, just like with the same design that we have in between here. So we will be sewing a strip on each side and at the bottom.
You mean right here on this side?
On each side.
Okay.
And then we'll sew something across the top, so there'll be a binding just like this.
Okay.
And then a border, I should say, not a binding. And then we will put the backing, and then we'll bind the quilt. And that'll be our next video.
All righty. Okay, well, I'm so excited. It is so cute. All right, you
You did
guys.
a great job.
Stay tuned for part 3.